Commander Wu sat in the dimly lit control room of monitoring station Kepler 7, sipping his third cup of coffee that shifted the vast emptiness of space stretched beyond the station's windows, dotted with distant stars that had watched over countless civilizations rise and fall. It was supposed to be a quiet rotation in this forgotten corner of the galaxy. Then the emergency transmission crackled to life across his screen, shattering the peaceful silence. The signal was weak, filled with static and interference, but the desperation in the voices cut through like a knife. Villani voices, high-pitched and musical, but now twisted with terror. Their colony ship Harmony's Dawn was broadcasting on all frequencies, sending out the universal distress code that every spacer dreaded to hear. This is colony transport. Harmony's Dawn to any vessel in range. We are under attack by Krex raiders. Repeat, we are under attack. We have families aboard, children, elderly. Please, someone help us. Wu's hands moved quickly over his console, trying to boost the signal strength. The Villani were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders and farmers. They had no weapons, no military training. They were sitting ducks against the savage Krex pirates who hunted these outer rim territories. His aide, Lieutenant Kim, rushed over with a data pad, his young face pale with worry. Sir, I've run the calculations. The nearest galactic defense fleet is 3 weeks out, minimum. By then, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what the Krex did to their prisoners. Wu studied the tactical display, his mind racing through options. The Krex were notorious for their brutality. They didn't just steal cargo. They took people as slaves, selling them in the dark markets of the outer worlds. The Villani children's voices, crying in the background of the transmission, made his stomach turn. Wait, Kim said, checking his scanner again. There's something else. An unregistered patrol group, about 2 days out from the Villani position. 3 ships, small fleet configuration. Who are they? What's their origin? Wu asked, hope flickering in his chest. Kim's face went white as he read the classification. Sir, they're marked as Deathworlder origin. The computer shows them as ... human. The control room fell silent, except for the continued desperate pleas from the Villani ship. Everyone in the station had heard the stories about humans. They came from a planet so dangerous that simply surviving childhood there turned people into natural-born warriors. Other species whispered about them in spaceports, the nightmare race from the death world called Earth. But as another child's scream echoed through the comm system, Wu made his decision. Legends and fears meant nothing when innocent lives hung in the balance. Send the coordinates to the human ships, he ordered firmly. Captain Jin stood on the bridge of the destroyer Iron Will, watching the endless stars drift past through the main viewport. His small fleet had been patrolling these forgotten outer rim sectors for 6 months now, far from the comfort and safety of Earth's inner colonies. It was lonely work, but someone had to keep watch over the frontier. The distress signal cut through, the quiet hum of the bridge like an alarm bell. Jin's communications officer, Lee, quickly routed the transmission to the main speakers. The desperate voices of the Villani filled the bridge, their musical language translated by the ship's computer into stark, terrifying words. Captain, I'm reading multiple hostile contacts on the Villani ship's position, reported his tactical officer Han, his fingers dancing across the sensor controls. The young man had served in Earth's border wars before volunteering for this deep space assignment. 12 Krex raiders, sir. Heavy assault class vessels. Jin felt his jaw tighten. The Krex were known throughout this region as ruthless pirates who showed no mercy to civilian populations. They specialized in capturing entire colony ships, selling the survivors into slavery in the lawless outer territories. What's our force? Strength? Jin asked, though he already knew the answer. 3 ships, sir. Iron Will, Stormcrow, and Wildfire. Combined crew of 78. Han paused, running the numbers through the tactical computer. We're outgunned 4-1, Captain. Maybe worse. Jin looked around the bridge at his crew. These weren't fresh academy graduates looking for glory. They were veterans who had volunteered for frontier duty when Earth's military downsized after the peace treaties. Men and women who had survived the brutal conflicts on Earth's contested continents, who had endured the great floods of 2387 and the famine years that followed. His navigator, Park, spoke up from his station. "Sir, if we push the engines, we can reach them in 36 hours. But those Krex ships, ... double quotes, he shook his head. Their firepower advantage is significant." Communications Officer Lee turned in his chair. "Captain, the Villani are still broadcasting. I can hear children in the background." Her voice was steady, but Jin could see the determination in her eyes. The same look he'd seen on Earth when civilians needed protection. Jin didn't need to think long. He'd grown up in the ruins of Seoul. After the resource wars, had seen what happened when good people stood by and did nothing while others suffered. "All ships, plot intercept course. Maximum burn," he ordered. "We have civilians to save." The crew exchanged knowing looks as they bent to their tasks. This was what humans did. When others were in danger, when the odds were impossible, when any sane species would call for backup and wait for better circumstances. Humans charged forward anyway. It was who they were. As the human fleet approached the battle zone, Captain Jin studied the tactical display with the keen eye of someone who had learned warfare on humanity's most unforgiving battlefields. The asteroid field surrounding the conflict stretched for thousands of kilometers, a maze of spinning rocks and cosmic debris that most species considered a navigation nightmare. "Captain," his navigator Yoon called out, her voice steady despite the dangerous course she was plotting. "I'm reading high radiation levels throughout the field. Solar flares from the nearby star have been bombarding this area for weeks. Most alien crews would need full environmental suits just to survive in there." Jin smiled grimly. While other species saw obstacles, humans saw opportunities. "What about us? Our shielding can handle it, sir. We've dealt with worse during the solar storm crisis back home." Yun had piloted supply ships through Earth's radiation belts during the worst solar activity in recorded history. This was just another day at the office for someone from humanity's Deathworld, his tactical officer. Han was already working on attack patterns, his mind processing the chaotic environment like a puzzle to be solved. "Sir, if we approach from the radiation shadow of that large asteroid cluster, we can get within weapons range before they detect us. The cosmic interference will mask our heat signatures." Jin nodded and opened the ship-wide communication channel. His voice carried to every crew member across all 3 ships of his small fleet. "Listen up, everyone. We're going into that asteroid field, and we're going to use every piece of rock, every radiation pocket, and every bit of cosmic debris as our allies. These Krex raiders have been terrorizing peaceful species for years because they expect civilized warfare. They expect their enemies to call for backup, to wait for superior numbers, to fight clean and predictable battles." He paused, looking at the swirling chaos of the asteroid field on his main screen. "They're about to learn how Deathworlders fight. We don't wait for fair fights. We make the environment work for us. We turn their advantages into our weapons. Every hazard they fear, we embrace." The 3 human ships Iron Will, Storm Crow, and Wildfire adjusted their course and dove straight into the asteroid field. Within minutes, they had disappeared into the swirling maze of rocks and radiation, becoming invisible ghosts among the cosmic debris, while the Krex raiders continued their assault on the helpless Villani colony ship. They had no idea that Earth's children were already hunting them through the darkness. Using the hostile environment as their hunting ground, the trap was set. Fleet Commander Vexstar stood proudly on the bridge of his flagship Blood Reaper, watching his 12 warships surround the helpless Villani colony transport. This had been almost too easy. The peaceful traders had no weapons, no military escort, and nowhere to run. In another hour, his boarding parties would secure thousands of new slaves for the Outer Rim markets. "Prepare the assault shuttles," he ordered his tactical officer. "I want the valuable ones taken alive. The rest, ... He made a dismissive gesture with his clawed hand. The Kreks had perfected this routine over decades of raiding. They were the apex predators of this sector, feared by every peaceful species that dared to travel these trade routes. Their heavily armored ships and superior firepower made them practically unstoppable. That's when the first asteroid exploded against his port shields. "What was that?" Vextar demanded, his reptilian eyes scanning the tactical display. "Meteor impact." Before his crew could answer, 3 more massive rocks slammed into his fleet formation. But these weren't random space debris. These asteroids were moving with purpose, guided by some unseen force through the cosmic maze surrounding them. "Commander," his sensor operator called out in panic. Unknown contacts emerging from the asteroid field. 3 ships, small-class destroyers. Vextar watched in disbelief as the human vessels materialized from the swirling debris like predators, emerging from tall grass. But what shocked him most was their tactic. Instead of approaching with weapons blazing like civilized warriors, these mysterious ships were actually pushing massive asteroids ahead of them, using the rocks as battering rams. "What kind of insane tactic is this?" Vextar snarled as another house-sized asteroid crashed into his shields, sending violent tremors through his flagship. The kinetic impact was devastating, far more destructive than any conventional weapon. His question was answered when the human ships opened fire. But even their shooting was wrong by every rule of space combat. They fired through their own debris clouds, using the chaotic shower of rocks and dust as cover. Their weapons emerged from the swirling chaos with perfect timing, striking his reeling ships just as they struggled to recover from the asteroid impacts. "They're using the environment as a weapon," his tactical officer whispered in horror. "They're fighting like the asteroid field as part of their fleet." Vextar had raided hundreds of ships over his long career, but he had never seen anything like this. These humans didn't fight like any civilized species. They embraced chaos, turned obstacles into advantages, and made the hostile environment their ally, for the first time in years. The Predator felt like prey. Marine Sergeant Sol checked her weapon one final time as the Storm Crow clamped onto the Kreks Raider's hull with a metallic clang that echoed through both ships. Behind her, 8 Marines in combat armor waited in the cramped airlock, their faces calm despite the chaos of battle raging outside. "Remember, these Kreks have never faced boarding parties in zero gravity," Sol told her squad through the comm system. "They're used to fighting on solid ground with artificial gravity. We grew up playing in Earth's orbital stations." The airlock hissed open, and Sol's team poured through the breach like water, finding the fastest path downhill. The Kreks ship's gravity generators had been damaged in the asteroid attack, leaving the interior in zero-gravity conditions that most alien species found disorienting and frightening. But humans were different. Sol and her Marines moved through the weightless environment like they were born for it, using handholds and wall chicks to navigate the corridors with fluid grace. They had trained in Earth's zero-gravity facilities since childhood, where a mistake meant falling into the planet's deadly atmosphere. The first Kreks defenders they encountered were floating helplessly near a damaged bulkhead, struggling to aim their weapons while spinning slowly in the weightless environment. Sol's team moved past them like a school of fish, each Marine covering the others in perfect coordination. "Contact front," called out Marine Min as a group of Kreks warriors tried to establish a defensive position at a corridor junction. But their formation fell apart when the humans didn't attack head-on like expected. Instead, Sol's squad split into 3 groups, using the ship's ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels to surround their enemies from multiple directions. "They fight like pack hunters," a terrified Kreks warrior reported over their communication. system before Saul's team reached his position. They don't fight individually. They move as one organism. The Kreks were right. Years of surviving Earth's brutal storms, earthquakes, and resource wars had taught humans that cooperation meant survival. When food was scarce during the climate crisis, families had learned to work together or starve. When the great earthquakes hit the Pacific colonies, rescue teams had perfected seamless coordination to save lives. Now that same instinct drove Saul's Marines as they methodically cleared the Krek ship room by room, while the aliens tired quickly. In the stressful zero-gravity environment, the humans seemed to grow stronger, their natural endurance allowing them to maintain peak performance for hours, within 30 minutes. The Krek's Raiders bridge was secure, its crew surrendering to the nightmare that had boarded their ship. Admiral Krexvalium had ruled this sector of space for over 20 years, his fleet striking fear into the hearts of every merchant captain and colony leader within 50 light. He was the undisputed master of these trade routes, a predator who had never known defeat. His 12 warships represented the most powerful raiding force in the Outer Rim territories. Now, he watched his empire crumble in real time. On his main tactical display, red icons representing his ships blinked out one by one. The Bone Crusher had been the first to fall, overwhelmed by a coordinated attack that came from 3 directions simultaneously. Then the Soul Render went dark after human Marines somehow boarded through a hull breach that should have been impossible to navigate. Admiral, his tactical officer Grixonal called out, his voice shaking with disbelief. The humans just used the radiation leak from the Blood Fang as cover for their approach. They flew directly through the contamination field. Krexvalium stared at the sensor readings. The radiation from his damaged ship's reactor would have cooked any Krex crew within minutes, forcing them to abandon their positions. But the human ships had actually flown closer to the leak, using the deadly energy as a shield to mask their heat signatures. Sir, the Death's Edge is reporting explosive decompression on decks 4 through 7. Another officer reported. But instead of retreating, the human boarding parties are using the escaping atmosphere to propel themselves to new sections of the ship. This was impossible. Every rule of space combat that Krexvalium had learned over decades of warfare was being shattered by these creatures from the legendary Deathworld. When normal species encountered hull breaches, they sealed them. The humans used them as doorways. When other aliens avoided radiation zones, these monsters flew straight through them. When ships lost atmosphere, civilized crews evacuated. These humans rode the explosive decompression like some kind of twisted transportation system. They're not just fighting in these conditions, his tactical officer whispered, watching another Krex vessel fall to the human pack. They're thriving. In them, every hazard we fear, they embrace. Every danger that would force us to retreat, they use as a weapon. Krexvalium felt something he hadn't experienced since he was a young warrior on his homeworld's brutal surface. Fear. Real. Primal terror that came from facing a predator more dangerous than himself. These humans weren't just another spacefaring species. They were apex predators from a world so hostile that it had forged them into living weapons. For the first time in his career, the hunter had become the hunted. The rescue shuttles from the human fleet docked with the damaged Villani. Colony ship Harmony's dawn just as the last Krex raider exploded in the distance. Captain Jin was the first through the airlock, followed by his medical team and translator Bo, a linguistics specialist who had studied dozens of alien languages. During her years on frontier stations, the scene that greeted them was heartbreaking. The Villani survivors huddled together in their ship's central bay, their large eyes wide with terror and exhaustion. These peaceful beings had never experienced violence like what the Krex had brought to their doorstep. Families clutched each other, parents shielding their children, elders comforting the wounded with soft, musical voices. When the humans entered, a strange silence fell over the group. The Villani stared at Jin and his crew with expressions that mixed amazement, fear, and something that looked almost like awe. Elder Villani, the colony's leader, slowly approached Jin with trembling steps. His translator device crackled to life, converting his melodic language into words the humans could understand. You are the Deathworlders from the ancient stories, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. We thought your kind were myths, legends told to frighten younglings about the species so dangerous that their own planet tried to kill them every day. Bo worked frantically with her translation equipment, making sure every word was accurately conveyed between the species. She had heard similar stories on other worlds, whispered tales of humans who came from a world of endless storms, earthquakes, predators, and disasters that would destroy any other civilization. Jin knelt down beside a wounded Villani child, his massive frame gentle, as he examined the young one's injuries. The contrast was striking. These same hands that had coordinated the destruction of 12 warships, now carefully tended to a frightened alien child with the tenderness of a parent. We're just people trying to help, Jin said softly, his medic team moving through the survivors with quiet efficiency. We heard your distress call and came as fast as we could. Elder Villani watched in fascination as the human warriors transformed into caregivers, carrying the wounded to safety with the same precision they had used in battle. These creatures who had just turned a hopeless situation into victory were now risking their own lives to save strangers. The stories were true, the elder murmured, but they never mentioned this part. They never said that the warriors from the Death World would be the first to answer our call for help. The news traveled faster than any ship through the galaxies, subspace communication networks. Within hours of the battle's end, every trading post, space station, and colonial outpost within 100 light-years knew what had happened in the asteroid field near Kepler-7. Merchant Captain Thelavar was loading cargo on Frontier Station Beta when the report came through. 3 human ships had destroyed an entire Krex raiding fleet, something no one had managed to do in decades. He immediately changed his shipping route, heading toward the sectors where human patrols were reported. Better to deal with Deathworlders than become Krex slaves, he told his crew, though his hands shook as he plotted the new course. Similar scenes played out across the Outer Rim territories. Colony transports that had been hiding in deep space suddenly emerged, broadcasting requests for human escort services. Trading vessels began transmitting seeking Deathworlder protection on emergency frequencies. Even the pirates and smugglers who usually preyed on legitimate shipping found themselves seeking human patrol zones for safety. The Krex fleet commanders who had terrorized this region for years discovered their hunting grounds, rapidly emptying. Admiral Krexthal, leader of the notorious Ghost Fleet, watched his sensor displays in frustration as target after target vanished into human-protected space. How are we supposed to raid when everyone runs to the humans? He snarled at his tactical officer. But even as he spoke, Krexthal found himself avoiding sectors where human ships had been spotted. On Terra Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Mi stood before the emergency session with reports streaming across her datapad. The elegant Altarian diplomat had spent years carefully managing Earth's limited contact with galactic civilization, maintaining the careful fiction that humans were just another minor species best left alone. The Deathworlders have revealed themselves, she announced to the assembled council members, her melodic voice carrying undertones of both concern and resignation. Earth's isolation period is ending. We can no longer pretend they don't exist. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some species demanded immediate quarantine protocols. Others suggested opening diplomatic relations. A few brave voices even proposed formal military alliance requests. But across the galaxy, the choice was already being made by ordinary beings trying to survive in a dangerous universe. Distress calls that once simply requested help now specifically asked for human assistance. The legendary Deathworlders had stepped out of myth and into reality, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since the rescue of the Villani colony ship, and Captain Jin barely recognized his own reflection in the mirror of his new quarters. The small patrol captain, who had once commanded a tiny destroyer, now stood as fleet commander aboard the massive battlecruiser Terran Dawn, one of Earth's most advanced warships. The bridge around him hummed with activity as hundreds of crew members prepared for humanity's greatest moment in galactic history. Through the massive viewport, Jin watched in awe as Earth's home fleet emerged from the Sol system like a sleeping giant, finally awakening. Ship after ship materialized from the jump points around Earth's solar system, massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen, sleek destroyers bristling with weapons designed from lessons learned in Earth's brutal wars, and carrier ships loaded with fighters piloted by humans who had grown up dodging asteroids. In Earth's orbital cities. Communications officer Lee, who had served with Jin since their frontier patrol days, looked up from her station with tears in her eyes. "Sir, I'm counting over 800 vessels in the first wave. Long-range sensors show more fleets mobilizing around Mars and the Jupiter colonies." Jin nodded, thinking about how far they had come. That desperate battle in the asteroid field had been the spark that lit a fire across human space. Within weeks of the Villani rescue, Earth's High Command had received thousands of requests for protection from species across the galaxy. The age of hiding in the shadows was over. Admiral Park's voice suddenly echoed across every ship in the vast fleet, carried by quantum communicators to every human vessel, spreading across known space. Her words were calm, but filled with the determination that had made humanity survivors on their death world. For too long, we watched from the shadows while innocents suffered. We told ourselves it wasn't our fight, that the galaxy was too big for one species to make a difference. We were wrong. Jin looked around at his bridge crew, seeing the same resolve in their faces that he felt in his heart. These were the children of Earth, forged by floods and famines, shaped by wars and disasters that would have destroyed any other species. "No more," Admiral Park continued. "Today, humanity takes its place among the stars. Today, we become the shield that protects the innocent, and the sword that strikes down those who prey upon the weak." Jin smiled, remembering the Villani children they had saved, their musical laughter echoing through the rescue shuttles. The galaxy would finally learn what Earth's children could accomplish. When they stood together, the age of human protection had begun.